There comes a moment in every life when the heart grows tired of carrying what was never meant to belong to it. A moment when the soul, quiet for so long beneath the noise of other people's demands, disappointments, and distractions, begins to whisper a simple truth. Not everyone who enters your life deserves a permanent place in it. Many of us are taught to hold on to friendships that wound us, hold on to relationships that diminish us, hold on to people who take from us more than they ever give. We call it loyalty, we call it patience, we call it love. But sometimes what we call love is only the fear of being alone, and what we call loyalty is simply the habit of carrying a burden that has grown too heavy. Happiness does not always arrive as something new. Sometimes it arrives as an absence. The absence of constant criticism, the absence of manipulation, the absence of the exhausting need to prove your worth to people who have already decided not to see it. And when those absences begin to fill your days, something remarkable happens. You begin to hear yourself again. You begin to recognize the person you were before the world convinced you that your peace was less important than someone else's comfort. There is a kind of freedom that waits on the other side of letting go. It is not loud. It does not announce itself with celebration. It arrives quietly, like morning light slipping through a window left open overnight. It touches the corners of your life that have been dark for too long and reminds you that you were never meant to spend your years shrinking to fit inside someone else's limitations. Tonight, we will explore a truth that can change the course of a life. Happiness begins the moment you find the courage to release the people who constantly pull you away from yourself, and to make room for the peace, dignity, and joy that have been waiting for you all along. One of the most difficult truths to accept is that not every person who enters your life contributes to your happiness. Some people arrive carrying warmth, encouragement, and understanding. Others arrive carrying confusion, negativity, and demands that slowly drain your spirit. The challenge is that the wrong people rarely reveal themselves immediately. They often come disguised as friends, companions, supporters, or even family members who seem to care. Over time, however, their presence begins to leave a mark. You feel exhausted after spending time with them. You find yourself questioning your worth. You become smaller, quieter, and less certain of who you are. The hidden cost of keeping the wrong people in your life is rarely visible at first, but it grows with every day you ignore it. Many people believe the greatest cost is emotional pain, but the price is often much greater. The wrong people consume your energy, and energy is one of the most valuable resources you possess. Every moment spent managing unnecessary drama, defending your choices, or recovering from someone's hurtful words is a moment taken away from your growth. While you are busy carrying the weight of unhealthy relationships, your dreams wait. Your confidence waits. Your peace waits. The life you could be building stands still while you invest precious time in people who have no intention of helping you flourish. The wrong people also have a way of changing how you see yourself. Human beings are deeply influenced by the voices they hear most often. When those voices constantly criticize, belittle, manipulate, or dismiss, their words begin to settle into your thinking. You may start doubting abilities you once trusted. You may apologize for things that require no apology. You may silence your opinions to avoid conflict. Gradually, you begin living according to someone else's judgment rather than your own truth. There is another cost that often goes unnoticed. Keeping the wrong people close can prevent the right people from entering your life. When your emotional space is crowded with unhealthy relationships, there is little room left for genuine connections, meaningful friendships, supportive mentors, and loving companions often require openness, trust, and availability. If all your energy is being spent on people who continuously drain you, you may overlook the very relationships capable of bringing joy and healing into your life. Fear keeps many people trapped in these situations. Fear of loneliness, fear of being misunderstood, fear of disappointing others. Yet there is a profound difference between being alone and being diminished. Solitude may feel uncomfortable at times, but remaining connected to people who repeatedly damage your well-being creates a deeper kind of loneliness. It is the loneliness of not being seen, not being valued, and not being accepted for who you truly are. Every unhealthy relationship leaves a footprint on the heart. Some leave scars of self-doubt. Others leave habits of people-pleasing, anxiety, or emotional exhaustion. The longer these relationships remain, the deeper their influence becomes. What appears to be a simple decision to tolerate someone's behavior can slowly shape the quality of your thoughts, your choices, your confidence, your opportunities, and your future. Many people fear loneliness more than they fear unhappiness. They stay in unhealthy friendships, toxic relationships, and exhausting social circles because the idea of being alone feels frightening. From an early age, we are often taught that being surrounded by people is a sign of success, belonging, and emotional security. As a result, many individuals tolerate disrespect, manipulation, and constant disappointment simply to avoid facing an empty room or a quiet evening. Yet one of the most liberating discoveries a person can make is that loneliness is often healthier than harmful company. There is a profound difference between being alone and being lonely. Being alone is a physical condition. Loneliness is an emotional experience. A person can sit in a crowded room and still feel invisible. They can be surrounded by friends, family, or partners and still feel deeply disconnected. Harmful relationships create this kind of loneliness. They leave you feeling unheard, misunderstood, and emotionally isolated, even when someone is standing right beside you. The presence of another person does not automatically create connection. True connection requires respect, trust, understanding, and care. When you remain attached to people who constantly drain your spirit, you often sacrifice your inner peace. Conversations become sources of anxiety rather than comfort. Gatherings become obligations rather than joys. You begin anticipating criticism, judgment, or conflict before it even arrives. In these moments, the company you keep becomes a burden rather than a blessing. The fear of being alone keeps you tied to situations that quietly erode your happiness day after day. Solitude, on the other hand, offers something valuable that harmful relationships cannot provide. Space. Space to think clearly. Space to rediscover your interests. Space to understand your own voice without interference from those who seek to control or diminish it. When the noise of unhealthy influences fades, you gain the opportunity to reconnect with yourself. You begin noticing your own desires instead of constantly responding to the expectations of others. You learn what genuinely brings you joy, what values matter to you, and what kind of life you wish to build. Many of history's most creative, thoughtful, and fulfilled individuals spent meaningful periods alone. Solitude allowed them to reflect, heal, and grow. They understood that personal growth often requires quiet moments away from external distractions. While society sometimes portrays solitude as something sad or undesirable, it can actually become a powerful teacher. It teaches self-reliance, emotional strength, and confidence. It reminds you that your worth does not depend on constant validation from others. Choosing loneliness over harmful company is not an act of defeat. It is an act of self-respect. It means refusing to trade your peace for temporary companionship. It means recognizing that your emotional well-being deserves protection. It means understanding that empty relationships cannot fill the deeper need for genuine connection. Sometimes the healthiest season of life begins when you stop chasing people who do not value you and start becoming comfortable in your own presence. In that quiet space, something remarkable begins to happen. The fear that once seemed overwhelming slowly loses its power. You discover strengths you never knew you possessed. You learn that your happiness is not dependent on who stays or who leaves. And as you become more at ease with yourself, you create the conditions for healthier, more meaningful relationships to eventually enter your life. Relationships built not on fear, need, or desperation, but on mutual respect, authenticity, and genuine care. One of the greatest losses that occurs in unhealthy relationships is not always visible from the outside. It is the gradual loss of your own voice, your energy, and your sense of self-worth. This process rarely happens all at once. It unfolds quietly over time through repeated compromises, constant criticism, unmet needs, and the habit of placing other people's opinions above your own. Eventually, many people wake up to the realization that they have spent so much time trying to maintain certain relationships that they no longer recognize the person they have become. Your voice is one of the most powerful parts of who you are. It is more than the words you speak. It is your ability to express your thoughts, communicate your feelings, establish boundaries, and stand firmly in your truth. Yet the wrong people often make you question that voice. They dismiss your concerns, minimize your experiences, or make you feel guilty for expressing your needs. Over time, you may begin speaking less, sharing less, and hiding parts of yourself to avoid conflict or rejection. What starts as a small adjustment gradually becomes a pattern. Instead of asking what you want, you start asking what will keep everyone else comfortable. Along with your voice, your energy begins to disappear. Emotional energy is not unlimited. Every difficult conversation, every act of people-pleasing, and every effort to earn approval requires something from you. When you spend years trying to satisfy people who are never satisfied, you become emotionally exhausted. The dreams that once excited you seem distant. The hobbies you once loved lose their place in your life. Your focus shifts from creating a meaningful future to managing the demands of difficult relationships. You survive rather than thrive. Many people do not realize how much energy they have lost until they step away from the individuals draining them. Suddenly, there is room to breathe. There is time to pursue goals that had been neglected. There is emotional space for creativity, learning, and personal growth. The constant tension that once felt normal begins to fade. What was once consumed by stress becomes available for healing and progress. Perhaps the most important thing reclaimed during this process is self-worth. The wrong people often make you feel as though your value depends on what you provide. You may feel appreciated only when you sacrifice, agree, fix problems, or meet expectations. This creates a dangerous belief that your worth must be earned through constant effort. But genuine self-worth does not come from pleasing others. It comes from recognizing your inherent value as a human being. When you begin reclaiming your self-worth, you stop accepting treatment that diminishes you. You no longer measure yourself through the opinions of people who fail to appreciate you. You understand that respect is not a reward reserved for a select few. It is something every person deserves. This realization changes the way you approach relationships, opportunities, and life itself. You become less willing to settle for situations that require you to betray yourself. As your voice returns, your confidence strengthens. As your energy returns, your possibilities expand. As your self-worth returns, you begin making decisions from a place of dignity rather than fear. You stop asking whether others will approve of your choices and start asking whether those choices honor the person you are becoming. You rediscover parts of yourself that had been buried beneath years of compromise. And with each step forward, you begin building a life that reflects your true value, your authentic identity, and your deepest aspirations. Many people believe that letting go of someone is an act of cruelty. They associate distance with rejection and boundaries with selfishness. Because of this belief, they remain connected to relationships that continuously hurt them, hoping that patience, sacrifice, or unconditional loyalty will eventually change the situation. Yet, one of the most important lessons a person can learn is that letting go is not always an act of cruelty. More often, it is an act of courage. It takes tremendous strength to walk away from what is familiar, even when what is familiar is causing pain. Courage is often misunderstood. People imagine courage as something dramatic, something loud and visible. They think of heroic actions and bold declarations. But some of the bravest decisions happen quietly. Courage is choosing yourself after years of choosing everyone else. Courage is recognizing that love should not require the destruction of your peace. Courage is accepting that some relationships cannot be healed by effort alone. Sometimes the most difficult words a person can say are, "This is no longer healthy for me," and then have the strength to act accordingly. One reason letting go requires so much courage is because it forces you to confront uncertainty. Even unhappy relationships can feel safe simply because they are familiar. You know what to expect. You know the patterns, the disappointments, and the frustrations. The future, however, remains unknown. Walking away means stepping into a space where answers are not guaranteed. It means trusting that something better is possible, even when you cannot yet see it. Many people remain trapped not because they are happy, but because they are afraid of what comes next. There is also the fear of judgment. When you choose to distance yourself from toxic individuals, others may misunderstand your decision. They may accuse you of being selfish, unforgiving, or ungrateful. Some people become uncomfortable when you establish boundaries because those boundaries limit their access to your time, energy, or emotional resources. It takes courage to remain committed to your well-being even when others disagree with your choice. True growth often requires disappointing people who benefited from your lack of boundaries. Letting go also demands honesty. It requires you to stop making excuses for behavior that repeatedly harms you. It asks you to see relationships as they truly are, rather than as you wish they could be. This can be painful because it means releasing hopes, expectations, and dreams attached to certain people. Sometimes you are not only letting go of a person, you are letting go of the future you imagined with them. That loss can feel profound, but facing reality is often healthier than remaining attached to an illusion. Choosing to let go does not mean you hate someone. It does not mean you wish them harm or refuse to acknowledge the good moments you shared. It simply means you have recognized that preserving your emotional well-being is necessary. You can care about someone and still understand that they are not meant to occupy a central place in your life. You can wish them peace while also protecting your own. The courage to let go is ultimately the courage to believe that your life deserves better. It is the decision to stop shrinking, stop settling, and stop carrying burdens that prevent you from becoming who you are meant to be. It is the willingness to endure temporary discomfort in exchange for long-term freedom, self-respect, emotional health, and the possibility of a future shaped by peace rather than pain. When people think about happiness, they often imagine gaining something new, a better job, a larger home, more money, greater success, or a perfect relationship. Yet some of the most meaningful happiness in life does not come from what we acquire. It comes from what we release. Happiness often begins in the space we create for ourselves after letting go of what no longer serves our growth. It emerges when we remove the people, habits, and influences that have been crowding our lives and preventing us from experiencing genuine peace. Many individuals spend years carrying emotional weight they were never meant to carry. They hold on to unhealthy relationships, old disappointments, constant conflicts, and the expectations of people who do not truly value them. Over time, this emotional burden becomes so familiar that they forget what it feels like to live without it. They mistake survival for happiness because they have not experienced the freedom that comes from releasing what drains them. The moment they begin creating space in their lives, however, they discover that happiness was never as far away as they believed. Creating space is not merely about removing people. It is about making room for healthier experiences. When toxic relationships leave your life, silence enters. At first, that silence may feel uncomfortable because you have grown accustomed to chaos. But gradually, the silence becomes peaceful rather than frightening. It allows you to hear your own thoughts clearly. It gives you the opportunity to reconnect with your goals, values, and dreams. Instead of constantly reacting to the demands of others, you begin responding to the needs of your own heart. This newly created space also opens the door to self-discovery. Many people lose touch with themselves while trying to satisfy everyone around them. Their preferences, ambitions, and passions become buried beneath obligations and expectations. Once those pressures are removed, they begin rediscovering who they truly are. They explore interests they had neglected. They pursue goals they once believed were impossible. They spend time doing things that nourish their minds and spirits rather than deplete them. An important part of this process is recognizing that happiness grows best in environments where respect and authenticity exist. When your life is no longer crowded with individuals who criticize, manipulate, or diminish you, healthier relationships have room to develop. You become more selective about who receives your time and energy. Instead of seeking people who merely fill a void, you begin attracting connections based on mutual respect, honesty, and understanding. The quality of your relationships improves because you are no longer willing to sacrifice your well-being for the sake of companionship. As space is created externally, something equally important happens internally. Fear begins to lose its influence. The fear of being alone, the fear of rejection, and the fear of disappointing others no longer control your decisions. In their place grows confidence. You begin trusting yourself more. You understand that your value is not determined by who chooses to stay in your life. Your sense of worth comes from within, and that realization becomes a powerful source of lasting happiness. The beauty of creating space is that it allows life to flow naturally again. Energy once wasted on unhealthy attachments becomes available for growth. Time once consumed by drama becomes available for meaningful experiences. Emotional strength once spent on surviving becomes available for thriving. What remains is a life with greater clarity, deeper peace, stronger self-respect, healthier relationships, renewed purpose, and a happiness rooted in freedom rather than dependence.